Welcome to Straight Talk for Women Only. I'm Judy.
I'm Janelle.
And I'm Mary.
And we're here with our guest, Andrea.
Hi.
Tonight, we have someone with us tonight that God just really brought her into our lives like suddenly this week. And she is going to share a lot about our topic tonight. Our topic is a very serious topic. And our topic tonight is there a skeleton in your closet called molestation? And tonight our guest is going to share because she really did have a skeleton in her closet for years. Years.
Years.
Yeah.
30 years to be exact.
30 years.
But before you start sharing,
Yes.
I want to let everyone know that you can send us your questions and comments right now. We're live. We're going to be with you for an hour. Go to questions@stfwo.com. Last month we got a suggestion that it was too long. We listened to your suggestions. So we are at questions@stfwo.com. So send us your comments and questions, please.
Also, we have a phone line
Yes.
that you can call in.
Yes.
You can call in at any time if you want prayer, if you'd like to speak to a live prayer minister who's waiting in the prayer center, and the number is 323-4996. That's 323-4996.
302 area code.
302 area code, yes. We're going to start with our guest tonight, and you have a story to tell about molestation that for years you had kept hidden, hadn't talked about it. I guess you hadn't told anyone, had you?
I had not told anyone. I had not even told my mother. From the ages of 11 to 13, I had been molested by a longtime boyfriend of my mother's. He was, I would think to her, the love of her life. He did not live with us, but their relationship was in such a place where he would come and stay with us on the weekends, and their relationship just really flourished and grew. My mother was from an abusive relationship with my father. He was physically abusive to her. He was emotionally abusive. And when she met this gentleman, she just changed. Her face lit up. She was just a new person. Because being with my father, she had just been this person who was angry. She just was always down and just really focused so much on my brother and I. But when this gentleman came along, everything changed for her. And it was the first time that I had saw her smile. It was the first time that I saw her, you know, she would do her hair and she'd put makeup on and she would, she just turned into a different person. You know, I don't know, maybe she turned into the person that she really was all along. And he made her feel really good. And so when he started to molest me with the fondling and with the kissing and with, you know, the inappropriate touching and things of that nature, I felt like I could not break that for her. Because she was a single mother. She was raising me and my brother. Her and my father had separated when I was 4. And she was just really struggling. And here she was now in this place where she was happy. And how could I now say to her mom that this man is coming into our house and he is touching me in places and he's kissing on me and he's massaging my breast and he's doing all of these things to me? How could I possibly say that to her, knowing that if I did, that she would put him out of the house? And not only would she put him out of the house, but she would probably do some other things to him too. So I took on the responsibility at the age of 11 and decided that I would not tell her, that I would not tell anybody in my family. I would not tell my brother. I would not tell an aunt. I would not tell an uncle, a friend. I would tell nobody.
Because
and I
you
carried
didn't want
it.
to see your mom hurt.
I did not. And I didn't want to lose her. As I shared with you ladies the other day, that my family was kind of like the rough family. You know, they would really hurt you if you did anything to their children. And so I knew that if I shared that 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 was a possibility, that I could lose everything and I would be by myself. My brother at the time was 18 and he was a professional musician. He's traveling all over. And so where would I be? Where would I go? What would happen to me if I told?
Right.
And so I kept it. And they stayed together for the entire 3 years that he molested me.
And how did it happen? Like, where was your mom when it took place? How
He would
did
do
have
it during times, like, for example, if he was over for a weekend or whatever, and my mother was cooking dinner. So my mother would be downstairs cooking dinner, and I'd be in my room, and my mom would come, and she'd say, Andrea, come down and get Mr. So-and-so's food for me and bring it to him. And I'd say, okay, and I'd go downstairs, and I'd go and I'd get the food, and I'd bring it up to him, and when I bring it up to him, that became our time. That became his time to take advantage, and he would fondle and he would kiss and he would press up against me, and he even attempted to penetrate. He did. But I was so fearful of it, and he didn't want to hear the scream. And so he veered away from that. He veered away from it. And, you know, she would yell upstairs and she'd say, Andrea, let Mr. So-and-so eat his food, let him be finished. And he'd say, oh, Rose, don't worry about it, she's all right. No, I wasn't all right. She thought I would, you know, just standing there, and she's all right. Well, no, I'm not all right, because he's doing things that I have no idea what in the world is going on.
And you tried to stop it?
Absolutely. And I never asked him why. I would never say, why are you doing that to me? I never even said, don't do that to me, because I just didn't know. I didn't understand. And you have to remember, now here I am, I'm 11 years old. I don't know. This is something now that's being exposed to me. And so I never said anything. I just didn't understand. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know, was he loving me? Was he just real friendly?
And he would say he loved you, right?
Surely he would. Oh, he would say that all the time. And he would say how much he loved my mother, and he never threatened me. He never said, if you tell, I'll do this. He banked on the fact that I loved my mother so much that I would never tell her. And he was absolutely correct. He played on that. He knew, because here it was just me and her. And so he knew that our relationship was so close and that she meant so much to me that I would never hurt her that way. I just wouldn't do it. I would never say anything to anybody.
Do you think your mother ever suspected anything was going on, or did she?
I think the fits of rage that my mother would see in me, the withdrawing that she would see sometime from me, I think my mother thought that that came because my father was not there. And because my relationship with my father was not good, because he would always say to me he was going to come and get me, and he was always going to, you know, do things for me, and he never would. And he would never do them. And so she just really thought that I grew up being angry about a lot of broken promises from my father. And it was not. It was because I was just really, to a degree, I was angry at my father, because I felt like, had you been here, this would have never happened to me. And I even now can say that I even was resentful towards my brother, because I felt like if you had been here too, that at least somebody in the house
would have protected
me. Somebody would have made sure that I was okay.
And so many times it's a trusted friend.
It is.
Or a family member.
It is.
Or someone that's trusted.
It is.
And it's not unusual for someone to hold that secret. That's why we said, is there a skeleton in your closet? Because people hold on to that, and you're married.
I am.
And you did not tell your husband either.
I did not share this with my husband. I did not share this with anyone until this book was written. And when the book came out, that is when people knew that I had been molested. And it was at that time, then people could begin to see why I would respond the way I do about certain things, how I could go from just being so very docile and go into a fit of rage over things that were just nothing.
When you was writing the book, I know you was saying that when you was writing the book, you were starting on something totally different, and it was the Lord that brought it to your attention. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
I was writing
that was pretty fascinating.
About, I thought I was writing a book about low self-esteem, and I'm going to help women get through low self-esteem. This is great, and this is going to be so wonderful. Oh my goodness,
Probably one of the manifestations of what you went through.
And it is, and it is a manifestation of it, because you become so withdrawn. You feel like you're nobody and nothing. And I really thought, like, wow, I'm writing this book about low self-esteem. This is going to be so good. And I'm sitting in bed, and the Lord begins to show me his face. And I'm like, wow,
The gentleman
who molested me. And I'm saying, I've not thought about this man in 30 years.
Because you repressed it.
It was almost like it never happened. And it did, I mean, it did, but it was just for me. It was like it
in the
never
past,
happened.
it's over with,
It was something
move
like,
forward.
you know. And the Lord began to talk to me about anger. He began to talk to me about rejection. He began to talk to me about the low self-esteem. And he began to talk to me about the place where it all stems from. And what I learned is that my being molested became the filter for everything I did.
Good point.
It was the filter for everything. It was the filter for relationships. It was the filter for how I would communicate. It was the filter for how I thought. It was the filter for my perception of things.
So
and I didn't realize that.
Before God told you that, you never connected
the
what
two.
you dealt with emotionally with what had happened to you.
Just had no clue.
Yeah, no, I thought I just picked up some traits from my mother because my mother was a very strong-willed woman, so I just figured I'm just like my mother.
Just like mine.
I'm just like her. I just, I'm snippy and I cut you with my words and, I'm
mess
just
with
thinking,
me, right?
yeah, you mess with me and I'm, had not even realized that thing became a defense mechanism for me.
That's what it is.
Because I kind of enjoyed when people feared me. If they thought that if they said something to me that I would snap, and I really would.
Keep them at bay.
And it kept them at bay, and I liked that. I kind of relished in it because it was powerful.
It kept you protected.
It did, and I felt safe because one of the things that being molested broke from me was my feeling of being safe. And even now, that is important to me, that I feel safe and that I feel secure. And when I don't feel safe, that is when I can kind of go back into that thing of self-preservation. Self-preservation where I feel like, okay, and I feel like I have to protect myself, but I really don't. I don't.
Okay, so this is wonderful. Our guest, Andrea Smith, who is with us, has written a book called Restore Such a Woman. And you can go to her website, restoresuchawoman.com, and get her book along with the prayer journal, the journal that you can write in for $12. Also, you can email us at questions@stfwo.com. We're ready to answer them. Andrea's ready to answer them. We want to hear from you. We want to know what God is saying to you and just help you release what you may have been afraid to release all this time. And also the prayer line is open, 302-323-4996. Call for prayer. We have someone available that will touch and agree with you and just help you get free.
That STR or whatever.
STFWO.com.
That's online. It's actually, okay.
Yes.
It's a synonym for Straight Talk for Women Only.
Yes. Yeah, it's the acronym.
Right, acronym.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Straight Talk for Women Only.
Right.
STFWO.
You just do the, Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
All right.
So, this book, when you began writing it, God told you it was not what you thought it was going to be.
No.
You saw the face.
Yes.
How did you say, okay, God, this is what I'm going to talk about?
I didn't. I said, okay, but you and I had talked about that, so everybody else doesn't need to know that. Everybody else.
So it was something you talked to God about.
You and I talk about,
Nobody else need to know.
Nobody else needs to know
Right.
my business. You and I can continue to have this conversation as long as you'd like, but nobody else needs to know this conversation.
Because did you ever feel like, and I know people say they do, that they were to blame?
Sure, because you think, well, what did I do? But I'm 11. How provocative can you be at 11? You're still playing with Barbie dolls. You're still trying to figure out what you're doing. Your body is changing and things. And so, getting pimples and all kinds of stuff. You're not thinking about that.
Right.
But when God said to me that this is the thing, and until you deal with this, you really won't be able to deal with much else. You just won't. Because this controls everything for you. And I really didn't see it. I really didn't. I felt like, well, God, that's just something that happened, and it was hurtful, and I wish that it didn't. But he began to show me that out of it, how depression started for me, how I began to question my own sexuality and how I began to explore my own sexuality and how the attempts of suicide, that they were all born out of this experience. I'm thinking I'm just like everybody else, you know, go through stuff and, you know, you get depressed.
Because you had a couple of relationships with girls.
Sure, I did. And didn't seem like there was nothing too wrong with it. I don't know. I'm thinking to myself, I am just exploring. I'm exploring what I think I like, maybe.
Oh, I have a question. So,
you scared me.
You said when we talked before that you were chasing a feeling.
Yes.
So
Yes.
with the molestation, when it began, and I want you to say this for people who have been molested and it woke something up. Even though it was wrong, it
Right.
woke it up. Can you talk about
Absolutely.
that a little bit?
Being molested, especially at a young age like I was, what happens is it unearths in you what God naturally put in you. He has naturally put in us sexual desires and to be pleasured. And so when you are now molested, what it does is it unearths things that are not supposed to be unearthed at that particular time. So now what happens is that there is a curiosity that is born. There is a desire to kind of understand why does that feel like that when this happens, or why do I get like this when I'm touched this way? And so you're exploring now. Now you start to chase a feeling because you really don't know
It's that awareness.
about the
Just that
intimacy
awareness.
part of it, or that it, you know, it stirs up your emotions and all of these different things. You're just now chasing a feeling. And so when I began to explore my sexuality, and you know, when I'm with a girl or if I'm with a man, I was really chasing a feeling. It wasn't about relationship and it wasn't about being tender. It was about, I want to have that feeling again. Because believe it or not, even when you are molested, you can enjoy it.
Your body responds.
Your body
That's a good
responds
point.
automatically
Very
because
good.
that's how God created our bodies to respond to certain touches and things that go on. And so you do respond. And so now you come to this place where your body just continues to respond.
And it's not your fault.
It's not. It is not your fault.
I heard a testimony from very well known, if I said her name, everybody would know. And she said that she was molested by her father once a week until she was 18 years old, from I think the age of 12 or so. And she said that she actually had orgasms when her father would be molesting her. And her husband said to her, why you got to tell that? Why are you telling that part of it? She said, I have to tell it because there's women out there that have to be set free.
They do.
They need
They
to
do.
know everything
They do.
that took place to
They
know it was not her fault
Right.
It was not.
that she was having
was
those
not.
feelings.
It was not.
Because people may judge and say, oh, well, you enjoyed it.
Right.
Oh, well, you
Crazy
wanted it to
No,
happen.
it is not.
That's not
Absolutely
true.
not.
Right.
It is, again, what happens is it awakens in you something, especially at a young age, that you are not prepared for.
Right.
It's in you, yes, but it was for a specific time. We all know that God would love for us. The ideal situation is that when we come together with our husband and our wife, that neither one of us have been sexually involved, right? That we've not been sexually active. But unfortunately for some of us, that is not the truth. And so now what happens is you come into your marriage bed and you bring things in from different experiences.
Right.
And even with people who have been molested or sexually violated or raped or whatever, you will find that the thing that they've experienced is the driver. That is the thing that excites them. So now when they get married, they bring that in. You know,
Exactly.
that wanting to look at pornography and masturbation and different things like that, because you bring that in because that became the driver for you, because that became the thing that you were introduced to.
Right.
That
That
now
brought
becomes
that
the
feeling.
things that brings the stimulation, as opposed to what God would desire for us, which is that we would come together with our spouses and explore one another and make.
Do you find that there's sometimes some women, if they go for molestation or sexually abused or whatever, that they could be just completely turned off from sex? They just literally...
They can be.
Well,
They
you
can
said
be.
that your husband would sometimes would touch you certain ways, you would flinch.
Sure, and I would draw back. And it would be because there would be a way that he may touch me, or a way that he might caress me, or a way that he might even kiss me, that would remind me of that time.
And he didn't know.
He had no idea.
He didn't know why he did
had
that.
no idea. And so when you begin to struggle with certain things.
That's funny you should mention that about the touch part, because I remember, I think I said this before, but there was a guy who was giving a testimony. He went to church, he got saved, and there was these guys praying for him. And while they were praying for him, they were doing all this, you know, praying, just praying. And he just, that thing triggered in him.
Wow.
Because that's how he was being molested. It started with this guy just starting to touch him and touch him and touch him and touch him. And then when that day, because he had never really been set free or delivered, he had just gotten saved, and when they were just men, just, you know, just being Christian guys, just, you know, kind of, you know, loving on him in a, you know, Christian man, you know, brotherly way. And he just, he just flinched back, he just, you know, just went off. And then he explained why he did
Why it was
so I
that
thought
way.
that was very interesting.
And it is, and you have to find out what the driver is, and there is an undoing that God can do. Because once you get to the place where you understand that this is what has happened to me, and you understand what it is that is now driving you, you have to let God remove all of the layers. You have to let him deal with everything. You have to let him deal not only with the hurt and the depression and the emotions that come along with it, but now you have to allow him to deal with the physical things that you do because of it. You know, there are people who delve into pornography. There are people
You said you did that.
I did. I delved into pornography. Masturbation was a struggle for me. And for me, that felt better than some, that felt better to me than actually sometimes being intimate with my husband. That felt better to me. It felt safe. But what I had to go back and understand is that, remember I shared with you earlier, is that he attempted to penetrate me, and that was fearful for me. And so now, here I come to this place, and so
free from that.
I'm, you know, and so even in relationships that I had prior to my marriage, you know, I would kind of steer away from that if I could. You know, let's do
something else. Yeah, I like this. I don't like that.
Well,
Get away.
That's you know, and I'm thinking I'm telling them something. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm
Which
trying
is
to tell
the
them something.
danger of masturbation, because sometimes in marriage, it becomes easier just to go masturbate than have the intimacy, or
to be intimate. Than to be intimate.
Yeah.
Because what happens is you lose that part because you're not allowed. That is something that's stripped away from you to allow you to experience intimacy.
Because intimacy is freedom. And it's honesty, and it's revealing.
Honest. It is.
And if I have something to hide, I'm not trying to go through all of that. I'm just trying to get to the feeling.
Get to the point. Let's get to the feeling.
Let's get it on.
We finished with the feeling.
Right.
We good. And so, and that happens quite often, that you just want to get to the feeling. And so you have to deal with, and I challenge, you know, anyone who has been sexually violated, whether it has been, whether you have been molested or whether you have been raped, that I would challenge you to deal with the driver. Because if you bring that into your relationship, you bring that into your marriage, then what happens is that now you can get to a place where your spouse can become obsolete to you. They're there, but they're not there. And you want them to be there. You want them to be present. You don't want your experience to be the driver for your time of intimacy with your spouse. You want your spouse to be the driver.
We have a question.
Sure.
My Lord, thank you, ladies, for exposing what the enemy tried to hide. I, too, was molested as a child by a family friend and was too afraid to tell. That robbed me of my innocence that a child deserves. Thank God I am now free and delivered, and I have forgiven the predator. I still have never told my family. Question, has Andrea forgiven her predator and her family for not protecting her?
Wow.
That is such a good question.
That is a great question.
I was never angry at my family, and I never felt that they did not protect me.
Well, you said
except
your brother.
my dad.
And your brother.
Well, because that's just natural to think that, you know, your dad should be there. Have I forgiven the predator? Yes. I'm okay. You know, if he walked into this room right now, I'm okay. I would pray that he would be all right. I pray that he knows the Lord.
Right.
I have not seen him. I don't know where he is. I don't even know if he is still alive today. But I'm okay. I
And
am.
you never were able to confront him?
I was never able to confront him. My mother invited him to my wedding, and he never responded to the invitation. And at that moment when she told me that, she said, "Oh, I sent Mr. Invitation," and I said, "Okay."
You're like, oh.
And I just moved on, like I always did, right?
Yeah.
You just move on. And so I just moved on. I never thought about it. He never responded. I said, "Okay, great. He didn't respond. Let's move on."
How did you go from not telling anybody for over 30 years to talking so candidly and honestly
and now it's in black and white.
Well, we know God was like this. You gotta write this, but it's easy to write a book, and then you don't talk about it.
Yeah,
you know, you write it and just to get it out, and you say that's your own little therapy or whatever. But how did you go from nobody's ever gonna know to everybody.
I know.
Right. And then and so detailed and
son.
Yeah.
Everybody knows now.
But your mother passed away.
My mother passed away in 2011.
So your mom did not know.
She never knew.
Okay.
And even during that time when my mother came to live with me in 2008 because she had gotten sick, and I became her caregiver. And even during that time that she was with me, I just wanted my mother to have a good quality of life.
Still protecting your mom.
Still protecting her till the very end.
Wow.
And so I just felt like, you know what? It is what it is at this point. I'll deal with this. I'll deal with it. And after she passed away, that is when it really became difficult. And so that's when I started to kind of delve into the book. I put it down, I stop, I put it down, and then God says, okay, now you're going to really write it and you're going to say it. But now he's brought me to this place where I can say it because I don't feel ashamed of it.
Okay.
I don't feel embarrassed by it because it wasn't my fault. It wasn't something that I brought on myself. It wasn't a decision that I woke up one day and said, I think I'll go in here and just let this man take advantage of me. It was something that happened to me. And what I found is that once I actually shared it, the people who would now respond to this, that became a little bit overwhelming for me because I didn't know that I would get that kind of response. But it's needed because it's so widespread.
And there's so many people that have dealt with it.
There are people sitting in church. There will be someone who will sit in church next to you on Sunday. There is somebody who will sit next to you on church in your Bible studies, in your women's groups, in your marriage ministries, singles ministry, who believe really that I'm good, and they're not.
Don't know why they act crazy.
They have no idea.
They have no
Now,
clue.
our question said that she never told her family. Talk about that because I know you had to share it with your husband.
I did.
Your family.
Well, I wouldn't suggest write a book. I wouldn't suggest that. But I would suggest that at this point that she would pray and now ask God to give her the courage to be able to share with her family because now she is in a place where she needs to be able to maintain what God has given her. And you can't maintain it by yourself. You do need people. And so for me, it was important now that I begin to share it because as God is now going to have me to share with other people, I need that support system. I need that. I need that my family is with me, that my friends are with me, and that, they're encouraging and supporting me, not judging me. And I would suggest to her, don't be fearful of being judged because there's nothing to judge. The only thing now is for you to be able to receive the love and encouragement that you need and that you deserve.
Do you think that telling it is one of the steps in being totally healed and totally free?
It is the biggest step that you make. And when she does it, I will tell you, I am proud of you now. Just for her to send the question in. I am proud of you for just sending in the question and being able to say that this happened to me. And I think that what I can even hear underneath your question is that you are prepared to tell, that you're prepared to share. And so what I would say to you now is let the Lord lead you in what you say, how you share it, whether you have children or not, I'm not sure, but how you share it with your children, how you share it with your husband and the remainder of your family. But know that God is with you and that he's going to give you the courage to be able to share and say. And the only thing that's going to happen after you share it is that people are going to love you even more than what they do now.
Question. when whoever shares it, that they get a heart to do that, is the name of the person is that important?
It was not important to me.
Okay.
It may be important to her. It may be important to people in her family that she shares it with. But what is most important beyond the name and who it was and the acts is that she's releasing it, and she's saying, this is what happened to me.
Speaking it to release it.
And she's speaking it to release
What
it.
happened when you told? Because some of your family did know the person.
They did. When I shared with my mom's sister, after the book was written, and I called her on the phone, and I said, Auntie, I have something to tell you. And she said, oh, what's going on? I said, I wrote a book. She said, oh, goodness, what'd you write? I said, well, I wrote a book about being molested from the ages of 11 to 13. And she said, what did you say? And I said, I was molested from the ages of 11 to 13. And she said, who did that to you? And I said, I don't want to tell you that. And then she said his name.
Wow.
And I said, yes. And she started to cry, and then she asked me, why didn't I tell? And I said, well, you know how our family is. You know, we're a little rough. You know, everybody carrying a gun and all kinds of stuff. You know, I shared with you all, I have an uncle.
Don't mess with Andreas.
Yeah, you know, I have an uncle who, you know, he carried a gun to the barbecue, the baby shower, the wedding, you know, everything. And so I felt like if I shared, that I would be alone. And that when I first said that to her, she was like, no, you should have told. And then she said, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Did you ever ask her what made her say that name first?
Because she knew that that was the one who my mother really loved. And she even repeated that to me. She said to me, she really loved him. She said, I could tell. And she said that her and my mother had a conversation, and she didn't tell me all of what it was, but she said that there was a conversation that her and my mother had had. And she said my mother really poured her heart out to her and really shared with her how she felt about him. And when she said his name, I didn't say anything, and she said she knew.
Let me ask you this, because there may be someone watching or people watching that maybe they have a child that's been molested or being molested. What, from your standpoint, what should a mother do if her daughter comes to her and says, I'm being molested by, and it's someone that she loves, that she trusts, because it's not unusual, as you know, we see it in the papers, on the news all the time, that boyfriends molest the children.
They do. Sometimes they kill them.
Yeah. Or even husbands.
And husbands. Fathers.
How should a mother respond?
She should first believe her child, and then she should not feel guilty. And now the reason and people will probably say, well, shouldn't she call the cops first? Well, she can do that, but the very first thing she needs to do is to embrace her child. Just embrace them. You know, you may have a moment where she says nothing, where you say nothing at all after they've shared with you what has happened. You may say nothing at all. And afterwards, then don't you feel guilty, Mom. Because you know what? You don't know everything. You're not everywhere. You know, unfortunately, you're not omnipresent, so you are not everywhere. You don't know all of what is going on. And so, but be prepared now to walk your daughter or son, because there are young men who deal with this as well, not just women. There are men who deal with this, and they deal with it in a different way, because it's about power. So they deal with it in a different way than girls would. Girls are more emotional with what they do. Men, they are more internal, and they express it in a different way. You may see some different behaviors with them. But be prepared now to walk your son or your daughter through a process, because that's what it's going to be. And it's going to be a process not just for you and your daughter, but it's going to be a process for your entire family. Because now everybody is going to have to be able to learn how to love even that much more, how to be more compassionate, how to be more understanding. There will probably be things that you will now come to understand once it's been shared. Because I know that I've had people say to me, oh, now I see why you were so angry. Now I see why you would withdraw so much. Now I see why you only had 1.5 friends. And now I see why you would do the things that you did because of what happened to you.
One of the chapters in your book is called It's a Process. What does that process look like? What is it and what does it look like?
That process for me, I gave this analogy of a caterpillar. And what God did with me during the time I was writing this book is he put me in this cocoon. And in the cocoon, it was tight and it was very restrictive. And the only thing that I could really hear was him speaking to me. Because sometimes when you're going through a process, a lot of people are attempting to speak. But when you're in the cocoon, the only person you really need to hear at that point is God. He's the only person you need to hear speaking, because he's telling you things about what's going on. He's preparing you, he's encouraging you, he's loving on you. And what he did for me during that time is that he just really held me real close, and he just would talk to me, and he would tell me that I was okay. He would tell me how beautiful I was. He would tell me that I was special. He would tell me how much he loved me, how much he cared about me. And during that time, what he did was he reintroduced me to myself. He said, this is who I really made you to be. This is who you really are. You're not that angry, hurt, depressed, you know, downcast young woman, and now woman who walks around afraid and, you know, thinking that she's nobody and nothing.
So did you go to therapy or any, or
I did not.
God was your therapist?
not.
When the sun sets free, it's free indeed.
And now, do I struggle sometime? I do. Are there some things that come and,
you know
but
your answer.
at least I know who to go to. And if I have to cry it out, I cry it out. If I have, now I am a talker. I need to talk things out sometimes. I need to have somebody in front of me or on the phone. I need to talk it out. And so I am grateful that God has placed people in my life who allow me to do that, and they help me walk it out. And so just like the caterpillar, when it's all done, and when your process, you come out and you look different, that's what happened for me. I look different. Because I shared with you all that I used to wear like really big clothes because I wanted to hide who I was.
That's a good thing.
And God was like, don't do that anymore.
It's amazing, because you'd be surprised until the Holy Spirit is when you get saved and the Holy Spirit starts, because that's all about the process of that salvation, being saved.
It is.
And then he's revealing, exposing, showing you. And you're just surrendering, yielding.
Absolutely.
Because when he showed you that face, I mean, just think, you could have went to your deathbed, never being free.
And never be free.
That's right.
And never help other people.
That's the
to be
thing, because
free.
there's a purpose in you telling
It
us.
is.
And it's not all about you.
Right.
It is not.
But it's about the people that are on the other side of our camera. It's about the people that are listening to this show. They're going to watch this show in the future, because a lot of people may not be looking tonight, but they watch our shows and then they send their questions, and you can do that. You send your questions, we'll see it, we'll answer it. So that's what it's about.
Because they can relate when you tell a story, and such as you're sharing in testimony and sharing very freely and very eloquently at that.
Yes.
Thank you.
And it's like a person that's hearing it, that maybe their memories have been buried, maybe they never came out.
Surely.
And all of a sudden, the Holy Spirit's now dealing with them,
This is why
allowing them
This
to realize and maybe bring it back to their remembrance. And now that they have the opportunity to get free by the power of God.
Absolutely.
You know, so what the enemy meant for bad, harm, devastation in your life, God just, and for countless others, like Pastor, free others, liberate and deliver others.
Absolutely.
Because right now there's people that are being set free and delivered simply because they know, my God, it's not just me.
No, it's
not. Oh my God, that happened to me too. You know, they can relate to that, and then begin to cry out, call out, do whatever it is the Holy Spirit is. Because the Holy Spirit, if you got you watching, it may be something that brings back to your remembrance, and it's your time to be set free and delivered, so that you can move on. Because if you're bound and you're in bondage to all of that, it messes up your family life.
Surely it does.
All the stuff you said to filter through with the anger, the fear, the frustration, the chip on the shoulder attitude,
Absolutely.
the anger.
And you bring it into ministry.
You thought that was just your personality.
Oh, you bring that
that.
You bring it into ministry because now you know one day you're serving, the next day you're not serving. One time you all in with Jesus, the next day you out. Now you in front of pastor and he counseling you and he's saying, well, what's wrong? He said, Pastor, I'm crazy. I'm crazy. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm just crazy.
Or all of a sudden you're crying and don't know why you're crying.
You don't know why you're crying.
Sure, it's all kinds of manifestations, and people don't even know why they do what they do, why they act the way they act, and it's just, we sometimes just need to ask.
You just need to ask. Get to the root of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get to the core of it.
You are watching Straight Talk for Women Only. We are live at straighttalkforwomenonly.com, and we want you to respond. We want you to send in your questions and your comments at questions@stfwo.com. Our guest, Andrea Smith, who is doing an awesome job.
Excellent.
Talking with us and sharing with you, has written a book, and it's called Restore Such a Woman. You can find her at her website, restoresuchawoman.com. You can get the book and the journal for $12. So please visit her website and email us. And the prayer center.
The prayer center.
The prayer center.
Yes.
302-323-4996. 302-323-4996. Call and get prayer. Don't stay home crying and struggling. And you know, now's the day. Today is the day of freedom. Now, right now, call 302-323-4996.
Yes.
Amen.
Let's talk a little bit more about, because I like what you said, that it was the filter, that everything went through that filter, but you didn't really know that was the filter.
That was the filter.
Until the Lord told you to write the book?
So I started to write the book.
So you started to write the book.
Because I don't know, or let me say it this way, that I really didn't know that I saw everything through that. Because here it is, the molestation became what shaped my idea or my perception of relationship, intimacy, love, kindness, all of that. It shaped all of that for me.
And you said he bought you gifts?
He bought gifts. He took care of my mother. Wow. You know, he was A-okay in the gift department. You know, he would do all of that.
So
but that was just
so when you went
being
out
manipulative.
with boyfriends, did you expect gifts all the time? They didn't bring you
know
no
what?
gifts like
Really?
hit the road, Jack.
Really, I didn't think of it like that. I really didn't even think like, you know, if he gives me a gift while we, you know, see.
Well, no, not that he would give you, but that you might expect.
But I just like gifts.
Like gifts. Okay, that's a natural thing for a woman. We all like gifts, right?
I like gifts.
I like gifts.
I like gifts.
Yeah.
Give me a gift.
You know, but I think that it changed, or it shaped, let me just say it that way, it shaped my perception of what relationship was and what intimacy was.
Because did you feel like he really loves me? And did you ever think that? Oh, there was something else that I wanted. Oh, well, let me answer that one first.
Yeah.
I just thought of something else I wanted to say. Did you feel like this man really loves me?
I did. And when you are without your dad, even though you know your dad wouldn't do that,
Yeah.
but when you're without that affection,
Some dads would.
you take it. You take it.
Did you feel like that was affection? That was love?
To a degree, I did.
Wow.
I did. I felt special, actually.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
That he would give me so much attention.
Wow. See? And people need to know that's okay that you felt that way.
It's okay
It's normal,
because
right? It's natural
normal.
to
You're
feel that way.
You know,
Right.
if you're 11, you don't know that that's not special. You don't know that that's, you know,
treating you nice.
that he's treating you, you know.
Giving
you
you
don't know
gifts.
that. You just, wow,
Just
he's
figure,
really
you know,
treating
he
me
really likes you.
different.
Different.
You know, when he's doing things for me. So
Right.
okay. You really don't know that. And
See,
it's the whole thing about it is
Well-
it's shaping a perception.
I think a lot of it also has to do with the fact that he was not a stranger.
He was not.
See, if he was a stranger, it might have been, like if he would have been kind, really loving, it might have been scary. But he wasn't a
But
stranger.
he wasn't a stranger.
And he
what
wasn't
makes
treating
sense.
your mom bad.
Right.
And he wasn't
somebody
treating her
your
bad. He
mom
wasn't hurting
trusted.
her.
Right.
She
So
trusted him.
therefore,
Wasn't beating your mom
He was
or
not.
abusing your
So
mom.
that
He
was-
was not.
so that was him loving you, just like he loved mom, he loves me. So it wasn't
So,
like the stranger.
what's wrong?
Right.
What's
so what
the
would
matter?
Right.
Problem was, made me do things that I wasn't supposed to
Right.
do.
Exactly.
Right.
But you didn't know.
It drove me to do things that, and explore and experiment in areas that I should not have. You know, it opened up things for me because it's perverted.
Right.
And so it opened up to me things that were perverted.
Perverted spirit.
A perverted way of loving, a perverted way of demonstrating affection. And so what God had to do in me and in most people who have been sexually violated is that he has to now undo the perverted part of affection.
Yes.
He has to remove that part from your mind. He has to remove that part even from your heart.
And so just getting married is not going to do it.
No.
Absolutely not, because you bring it with you.
Yes.
You know, you bring it with you. You know, even if you haven't been sexually molested, there are things that you bring into your marriage if you've been sexually active. You just
Right.
bring it in. You know,
Exactly.
you bring in other experiences, right? Maybe they weren't perverted, but you still bring in those experiences. So there's no difference in that. You still bring it in. You still bring in what you did with Joe, and you know he bring in what he did with Mary, and you know now you're trying to marry that all into what y'all trying to do together.
Right.
Yes.
And so it's the same thing with being sexually violated. And now you bring in those experiences. Remember earlier we talked about that those things become drivers. And so, but if you don't talk about it prior to, it can be hurtful because your husband can think that he is not pleasuring you
Right.
when he doesn't understand that it has nothing to do with him at all.
Right.
And so it becomes important, and I would challenge any pastor or anyone that does premarital counseling that you talk about those things. You know, has that happened to you? You know, we talk about
good, yeah.
their family. We talk about the kind of car he drives. Does he have a job? Let's look at his credit report. We do all of that.
Communication, yeah.
You know, can you provide for me? All of that. That's great. But let's get into where you have been, because intimacy becomes a very important part of our marriage.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, it's great where we live in and we going on vacation and, you know, he's got a great job and I do too. But when it comes to intimacy, what's going on there?
Right.
Are there going to be any barriers? Is there anything that would hinder you from, you know, loving your husband the way that he desires? And if there are things that he's brought into the marriage bed that we say is undefiled, the Bible says is undefiled, then you need to be able to talk about that. Why is porn a driver for him? Why is masturbation a driver for her? Why do we have to, like, you know, have whips, and why do we have to, like, have,
boots.
you know, blindfold me and turn me around 3 times, and, you know, why do we
Tie me to the bed.
Yeah, you know,
Oh,
why we gotta do
Lord.
all that? Why we have to do all of
I
that?
don't want to do all that.
Yeah, you know, and then if he starts bringing it in, or she starts to bring it in, then you need to question, like, okay, well, where you
What's
get that
happening?
from? Because, you know, we in year 4. We didn't do that in year 2. So what?
Because
so you
and-
want to
and
know.
when all that perversion has happened, then it's not enough. It leads to, okay, I got to do this to get
Oh,
Right.
Unquenchable thirst.
Right.
for-
Yeah.
To get
Yeah.
somewhere,
Let's
because
try
it
this.
leads to
Yeah.
other
Well,
things.
let's
You
try
need
this.
some more.
And it really gets perverted.
Because you brought up a really good point the other day when we were talking about a lady had said to you one time, someone said, tell that.
She said that the only time she ever had orgasm in life was when she was raped. And she had been raped twice. And that was the only time.
And she was married
She had been married for
and had
years.
not been able to achieve it.
No. That was the only time. Now, she didn't, I don't think she asked her husband to be rough with her or anything like that, but,
Right.
but it was just, that was the only time that had happened. And her marriage relationship wasn't so great either. So, you know, that didn't help. But it goes back to how you're saying your body will respond to stuff
does
even
respond.
when it's not right.
Exactly.
Even when it's not right. And you know, I don't want to project that you and your husband cannot explore, but explore what makes you and he,
works with
Right.
both of you.
what
two.
works for you.
Right.
What's
You know,
from your
let's not
past or not-
explore what, you know, we did
used
with
to-
someone else, but let's explore who we are, because God gave us pleasure. You know, there is a reason why we as women respond in a certain way when we're touched in a certain area or when we're kissed in a certain area, because God made it that way. So there's nothing wrong with that, and that should be. But what we don't want to do, or what we don't want to have, is experiences that come from a perverted place.
Yes.
Right.
that has to be undone.
And any sex before marriage is from a perverted place, because that's not God's design. That's not
It's
God's
not his design. It's not his design that we would come together that way prior to.
What is something that a husband, because we have men that watch our show secretly, but we know you are. What might be some of the signs that they might see their wife reacting or acting or responding or not responding, that they may want to think or ask her, has anything ever happened to you?
It's funny she should ask that question. I was sitting here thinking, there's an old, you ever heard of this word when they used to say, oh, she's frigid?
Yes.
That's a big one. Frigid.
Yeah. Are there any signs that might give the husband the thought that he never thought of, that maybe my wife was violated?
Let me say this before I share that. The first thing that I would say to a man is to not be offended. That he can't speak to her out of his offense.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Because it is not about you.
Yes.
Oh, that's good. Talk to that.
It's not an attempt on her part to emasculate you as a man or to make you feel like that you are not able to pleasure her. But what I would suggest is that if your wife if she withdraws because of a certain type of way that you touch her, or a certain way that you kiss her, or even words that you may speak to her during the time that you're being intimate, I would suggest that before you speak to her, that you be prayerful, because you don't want to speak out of your offense. You really want to speak out to her in a loving way and out of a loving place, because the ultimate goal is that you want to be able to pleasure her. And so begin to ask her just certain questions. You know, I noticed that last night when I touched you here that you
flinched.
You flinched or you withdrew from me. Why is that? If she's not prepared to give an answer, be okay if she's not prepared to give an answer. But keep being prayerful and keep remembering that you cannot speak to her from an offensive place.
That's good.
Yeah, that's very good.
That's good. When you said about if a child came and told the parent, how should the parent respond? And you said she should embrace
absolutely
the child and believe.
And believe.
Is that embrace a sign of safety? Because now the child has told, so I'm sure they feel very vulnerable.
They do.
And very scared.
Oh yeah, because you're so exposed at that point.
Right.
And so to tell and then to have your parent embrace you and to say, okay.
That's accepting.
Even if they don't do anything at that moment, but just embrace you and say, okay, that is huge.
Okay.
That is huge.
Well,
because now they feel like, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah. Are there symptoms or for parents, are there anything to look out like for your children to maybe say, has anyone touched you, or is there anything you should look for with your children?
I'm not sure that when you begin to see different behaviors, would you automatically ask the question, have you been touched? But it is at least a starting point to begin a conversation to try to understand where their behaviors are coming from. For example, you know, my mother thought that my fits of rage came because of the fact that my father was not in the house. Now, she would never think to come and say, was it because of Mr. So-and-so was touching you? She would never think that.
Right. She never thought he would do that.
But I think that when you approach your children and you begin to probe a little bit, that could break open a way for them to now feel safe, to be able to come and say to you that this is what's happening.
When you were a child, when you were around that age, were you ever told by an adult, no one should touch your private areas? Were you ever told that?
No.
Okay.
Because when I was little, at that age, at that time, you just never said anything.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what I thought.
They never even had conversations about that. I mean,
Yeah.
the only convection moms had with you was, you know, about your menstrual cycle and make sure you do what you're supposed to do. And that was pretty much it when it came to sexuality.
Always have clean underwear.
Right. You know, that was pretty much it when it came to sexuality.
My girlfriend said she had gotten her menstrual and she went and told her mom, said, okay, stay away from them boys. You just stay away from them boys. You understand me?
That's it.
So she went to school, and then the boy came and she said, stay away from them. You know,
right, it
no
wasn't.
details.
I mean,
Right.
I don't remember my mother having a sex talk with me, except for right before I was getting ready to get married.
Wow.
And then she said, okay, I have to have this talk with you. And then it was like weird, you know, because it wasn't like the
Right.
full thing. It was
No,
just,
you know.
okay, I need to tell you this is going to happen when you have sex.
What happened? No.
Oh my
that's
God.
crazy.
So we don't have those conversations,
Yeah,
but
them
now
days, yeah.
we live in a time where we need to have those
Exactly.
conversations
Absolutely.
because our children are exposed to much more
Yes.
than we ever thought that
And
we would
you
see
And they
on
think it's
TV.
normal.
When they're little.
They think it's natural.
Yeah.
They think it's
They think it's the
everything
norm.
goes, it feels good, do it.
They do.
Everybody's doing it. What's the
They do.
problem?
Yeah.
They do.
I mean, I tell my children and my grandchildren, no one should touch you in a, you know,
Right.
in your private areas. Those
Right.
areas are private to you. The only one that should touch you is if mom's washing you,
Right.
or, you know, or these are the only people that are permitted to
Right.
ever see you when you're getting dressed, if we're helping you, or, you know, so
That's
I
right.
think it's so important for parents to tell their children.
It is.
And to
Help
tell
them
them,
be
if
prepared.
anyone ever touches you, tell me.
Yeah. Or ask
Tell
you to
me.
touch them.
That's it.
Tell.
Or
Yeah.
that's it.
Tell.
Tell. Because help them be prepared. Don't, you know, not say anything because you think you're going to expose them, or, you know, don't be super spiritual thinking that I'm
Right.
speaking into your life now because I've told you.
Right.
Well, no, you're not.
Gotta
You're
talk about it.
preparing me. Help me understand. Help me to learn how to maneuver, because that's one of the things that we're supposed to do as parents, that we are supposed to help our children to be able to navigate through.
Right.
And so even at the age of 11, help them to navigate. Don't just leave them out, and then when it happens, everybody is terrified, everybody is horrified, and it's, you're crying, and it's terrible. Help them navigate even at 11. There are ways that you can approach your children and be able to tell them about sexual things that don't make you feel so uncomfortable, and it won't make them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And just what you said about no one should touch you in this particular place, and no one should be undressing you except for me, or maybe your dad or grandma, or you know, people who we designate to take care of you. And when you give them the boundaries, then it works.
That's
Yes. great.
It works.
We have a few more minutes left, and I want you to talk about the last chapter in your book that says, "Do you."
Yes. And look at the camera, because we have a lot of women out there that watch
Yes.
the show that need to know.
How do they
Yeah.
do them? Do you? What is that? What does that mean?
In the book, I talk about Do Me Fridays. And my Do Me Fridays were just what I do on a Friday. If it meant I went to lunch, if it meant I went to the hairdresser, if it meant I just sat in a corner somewhere and I read a book. That was my time for me. Because one of the things that you do in appreciation to God is to show Him how much you love Him when you take care of your own self. And so really, when you learn how to celebrate you, when you learn how to honor you, when you learn how to accept who you are and appreciate how God has created you and what He's put on the inside of you, doing you becomes great. Because it's just time for me, and it's not selfish time. It's not that, you know, everybody get away from me, but it's just a time where I can just do whatever I want to do. And if I don't do anything, I'm still doing me. And I just celebrate me.
I love it. I like the way your
celebrate who
face
I
lights
am.
up when you
I love Do Me Fridays. I love
Tomorrow's Friday, ladies.
Oh, I know.
Yes,
Don't call me
we
because
make
they want me.
She's gonna be busy doing her.
Doing me.
Oh,
Do Me
God.
Fridays.
And that's a part of healing, is loving
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is the most freeing thing I think that you can do, because you really say, God, I thank you for how you've made me, how you've created
like
me.
that.
Yes.
That I'm not, you know, I really don't have to have my hair like Pastor Mary. I don't have to have my makeup like Janelle. I don't have to wear heels like so and so. I can just do me, and I'm good.
And be comfortable with yourself.
And be comfortable with who you are. With who you are.
That's good.
Do you, boo?
Well, we want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching our show tonight. Is there a skeleton in your closet called molestation? And Andrea, we want to thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Because
I
God
appreciate
sent you
it.
to us.
Thank you.
God planned this, purposed this, strategized this,
Amen. Set
plotted
it up,
this.
plotted, planned, strategized.
I'm using
God
Mary's
is
words.
always up to something.
Yes, He is.
And He gets
Yes,
it
He
done
is.
Yes.
very well.
Yes.
And if you watch our show and you have questions, our show will be archived so you can look at it. Even tell your friends, watch it, look
Yes.
at it. This is
Yes.
a subject
Share
that
it.
needs to be talked about. We're bringing it out into the open like we do on Straight Talk for Women Only.
Yes.
And tell people.
Yeah. Go to straighttalkforwomenonly.com and you can share the link. You can see our past shows and you can send people there. We're on Facebook at Straight Talk for Women Only, and we're on Twitter at STFWO. And again, you can find Andrea at restoresuchawoman.com. You want to get this. It's an easy read. It's a thin book, and it will help free you and others.
Yes.
Amen.
And if you have topics that you would like for us to address, please send it to us.
Yes.
And we'll talk about it.
Yes.
And we want to let you know that you are graced.
For everything.
That you face.
God bless you.
Yes.
Good night.
Thank you for watching.
Amen.